We're live from New Delhi. Watching India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Navika Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. US judge says probable cause exists to hold a Trump administration in contempt for violating deportation order. Gives April 23rd deadline to comply with court order or face prosecution. US media says Trump blocked an Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear sites in May in favor of negotiations. IAEA chief in Tehran warns Iran not far from possessing nuclear bomb. Another blood-red end to the trading day in US. Nasdaq S&P 500 fall as US stock losses deepens. Semiconductor giants Nvidia, AMD tumble as Fed chair says tariffs will fuel inflation and constrain growth. Ahead of US-Iran talks in Rome on Saturday, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi to visit Moscow to hold consultations with Russian top officials. Favourites bite the dust as Real Madrid and Bayern Munich exit Champions League. Arsenal drops Real while Inter Milan pips Bayern to enter semi-finals. And on to the details now. A U.S. judge on Wednesday said that President Trump's administration's officials could be held in contempt of court charges for violating deportation order. The U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, in a written ruling, stated that probable cause exists to hold U.S. government officials in criminal contempt of court proceedings, as he said that officials illustrated a willful disregard towards his March 15th order to halt the deportation flights to El Salvador. In a written opinion, the judge cited evidence that the government had engaged in deliberate or reckless disregard of his order when it proceeded with the flights. He gave the administration until April 23rd to outline what steps it would take or to identify the officials who decided to disregard his order so they could potentially be prosecuted. Meanwhile, White House Communication Director Stephen Cheung on social media said the administration would seek immediate appellate relief. Also, the White House criticized Senator Chris Van Hollen's visit to El Salvador to support Kilmer Abrego Garcia, a wrongly deported man. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt claimed Garcia had MS-13 ties and warned he would be deported again if he returned to the U.S.
Today, we have officially learned Democrat officials still refuse to accept the will of the American people. Maryland Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen rushed to Dulles Airport this morning to fly to El Salvador, potentially using taxpayer dollars, to demand the release of deported, illegal, alien MS-13 terrorist. The Democrats and the media in this room have continually and wrongly labeled Kilmer Abrego Garcia as a Maryland father. There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmer Abrego Garcia is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist who was deported back to his home country.
Well, earlier in the day, Senator Van Hollen said authorities in El Salvador had denied him access to Kilmer Abrego Garcia. Along with Abrego Garcia, the Trump administration has deported hundreds of people, mostly Venezuelans, whom it says are gang members, to El Salvador under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 without presenting evidence and without a trial. Well, California sued the Trump administration on Wednesday, challenging the president's authority to impose sweeping tariffs that have set off a global trade war. The lawsuit, which was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, seeks to block Trump's sweeping tariffs on foreign trading partners, accusing him of abusing his powers and inflicting financial harm on the state and nation. Democrats asked a judge to bar the Department of Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection from enforcing the tariffs tariffs. The act enables a president to freeze and block transactions in response to foreign threats, but doesn't allow the president to adopt tariffs, the suit says. California's move follows rapidly changing tariff plans by the Trump administration. The lawsuit also argues that enacting such tariffs requires approval from the Congress. And Israel has expanded its military control in Gaza, converting 30% of the territory into a buffer zone. The Israeli military has achieved operational control over key areas and routes, striking 1,200 targets and conducting targeted eliminations. Israel has proposed a 45-day ceasefire, which includes hostage release and Hamas disarmament. However, Hamas says its weapons won't be subject to negotiations. Israel continues to block humanitarian aid, citing it as pressure to prevent Hamas from using it as a tool. The International Court of Justice will hold hearings on Israel's humanitarian obligation towards Palestinians. The situation remains dire on both sides. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pushing to get hostages held in Gaza released, he met with his negotiating team and security chiefs to discuss the situation. According to his office, Netanyahu instructed his team to keep working towards securing the hostages' release. Meanwhile, the Israeli army released a video showing its troops operating in Gaza. Defense Minister Israel Katz said Israeli troops will stick around in the buffer zones they've created in Gaza even if a peace deal is reached. This comes as efforts to revive a ceasefire agreement have hit a snag. Since restarting military ops last month, Israel has taken control of a big chunk of Gaza, pushing over 2 million people into smaller areas. Israel says it's a complex situation and it's unclear what will happen next. The conflict has caused significant displacement and humanitarian concerns. Also, U.S. President Donald Trump has blocked Israel's planned strike on Iranian nuclear sites, opting for negotiations instead. According to the New York Times, Israel had planned to attack in May to set back Iran's nuclear program by a year or more. Trump decided to pursue diplomacy after months of debate. The U.S. and Iran recently held positive and constructive talks in Oman, with a second round scheduled for Saturday in Rome. And Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni arrived in Washington on Thursday for a meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump to ease tensions over U.S. tariffs. Well, the meeting comes as the EU struggles to respond to Trump's threat of sweeping new tariffs on European goods, which could hit industries from wine to machinery. Meloni's allies insist she will act as a facilitator between Brussels and Washington. She has also aligned with the EU on some key votes, including retaliatory measures in response to earlier U.S. levies. Meloni was the only EU leader invited to Trump's inauguration in January, and this week's meeting will take place the day before she hosts Vice President J.D. Vance in Rome. And Serbia's parliament on Wednesday approved Đorđe Muscovite as prime minister following months of anti-corruption protests that led his predecessor to resign. The vote was a formality since the Serbian Progressive Party or populist president Aleksandar Vučić has a majority of 156 deputies in the 250-seat parliament. Opposition parties had demonstrated a transitional government prior to elections due in 2027, which Vučić and his allies rejected. The new government will have 31 ministers, 32 of whom served under former Prime Minister Milos Vučević, who's resigned amid protests that began in November following a roof collapse at a train station in Novi Sad. Daily rallies led by students spread across Serbia and became the biggest challenge in Vučić's 12-year-long rule, with protesters denouncing widespread corruption and incompetence. And Serbia's students and their supporters rallied in Kraljevo in central Serbia on Wednesday in the latest anti-government protest. Serbia has seen months of rallies against the government after 16 deaths from a railway station roof collapse triggered accusations of widespread corruption and negligence. Daily rallies led by students spread across Serbia and became the biggest challenge, with protesters denouncing widespread corruption and incompetence that led to the disaster. Just last week, thousands from towns in Serbia, Kosovo and Bosnia gathered in Belgrade in support of President Vučić. Prime Minister Đuro Makut said his government wanted an end to the protest and called for a dialogue with the protesters. And moving on, Argentine retirees clashed with security forces in Buenos Aires on Wednesday during their weekly protest, prompting police to deploy pepper spray. The confrontation unfolded as demonstrators tried to block traffic near the Congress building, escalating tensions with riot police. Since March, the protests have grown increasingly confrontational, reflecting deepening frustration over retiree rights and the government's handling of the issue. The retirees are opposing President Javier Milei's austerity policies, which they argue have severely affected their quality of life by eroding their purchasing power and limiting access to essential medications and healthcare services. Well, Nepal police have confiscated a large quantity of shaligram stones in Mastang. The collection of large amounts of shaligrams is prohibited in Nepal. Well, the area police office in Mastang seized 894 kgs of shaligram stone packed in 34 white sacks from a vehicle headed to Jomsom. The stones were handed over to the Annapurna Conservative Area Project in Pokhara for investigation. A priest from the Shaligram temple in Gandaki province stated that shaligram stones are fossilized stone or ammonite collected from the riverbed and banks of the Kali Gandaki, a tributary of the Gandaki River. Revered by Hindus as sacred symbols of Lord Vishnu, these stones hold deep spiritual value. And the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Mariano Grossi, warned on Wednesday that Iran is not far off from making its own nuclear weapons. In an interview to French newspaper, Grossi said they have the pieces and one day they would eventually put them together. Grossi is visiting Iran in an attempt to narrow gaps between Tehran and the agency over unresolved issues. The IAEA chief met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran on Wednesday ahead of a planned second round of talks between Iran and the United States in Rome on Saturday. Grossi described his meeting with Araghchi as important. He's also expected to meet Mohammad Islami, who heads Iran's nuclear energy agency. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Amravati Airport inaugurated in Maharashtra, commercial flights operations to begin with Mumbai route. INS Tarini enters Cape Town, all-women-led Navika Sagar Parikrama 2, showcasing India's naval strength and indigenous shipbuilding. And we'll take you to England, where tulip season is in full bloom.
Goa, an adventure paradise like none other. From lush forests to rugged hills, from pristine ocean beach stretches to stunning lakes, there is something to explore in every corner of the state. And some adventures are wilder than others. Watch postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and moving on, Defence Conclave 2025 Force of the Future will be organised in New Delhi today, where Defence Minister Rajnath Singh will deliver the keynote address. The conclave promises a full day of high-octane discussions, insights and policy-oriented brainstorming on the dynamic transformation of India's defence sector. While taking place over 2 transformative days, the summit will delve into the critical role the emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, quantum computing, autonomous systems and space technologies play in fortifying national security and modernizing defense strategies. The conclave stands as a unique opportunity for the defense industry to harness the potential emerging technological advancements. And as part of the ongoing supply of relief material and humanitarian aid to Myanmar under Operation Brahma, India sent further aid on April 15th. Aid including components of 20 prefabricated offices weighing approximately 50 tons were dispatched by IAF C-17. The structure will be used as temporary offices for various ministries in Naypyidaw. Further, 2 IAF C-17 were deployed to bring back doctors and personnel of 60 para field hospital post-de-induction. The 200-bedded field hospital has successfully provided treatment of 2,519 patients over the past 2 weeks. Under Operation Brahma, India was the first responder to the earthquake in Myanmar on 28th of March and has provided relief supplies of approximately 750 MT, including essential medicines and food grains, etc. Further, humanitarian assistance consisting of an 80-member NDRF heavy urban search and rescue specialist team and a 127-member Indian Army field hospital team were also deployed. Well, the Amravati airport was inaugurated on Wednesday, marking the arrival of the first commercial flight from Mumbai to Amravati, as well as the takeoff of Air India's Flying Training Organization or FTO demonstration flight. The airline will operate regular commercial flights between the 2 cities on Monday, Wednesday and Friday, while the school, which will come up in 5 to 6 months, will produce around 180 pilots every year and will have at its disposal 34 aircraft for training. On the occasion, Union Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu said that the pilot training school will be the largest in Southeast Asia and will put the city around 150 kilometers from Nagpur on the world map. Naidu added that while there were only 74 airports in India in 2014, the number of airports has gone up to 159 in 2025. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the inauguration of Amravati Airport, terming it as great news for Maharashtra. In a tweet, he said, and I quote, Great news for Maharashtra, especially Vidarbha region. An active airport in Amravati will boost commerce and connectivity. And India reached a significant milestone in railway infrastructure on Wednesday with a successful breakthrough of tunnel number 8 in Rishikesh Karnaprayag railway project. The tunnel boring machine has made it through the longest transportational tunnel in India, which is 14.58 kilometer long on Wednesday. The tunnel has surpassed existing rail and road tunnels in Jammu and Kashmir and Himachal Pradesh. The event was marked by the presence of Union Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw, Uttarakhand Chief Minister and Garhwal MP Anil Baluni. The tunnel is part of the ambitious Rishikesh Karnaprayag broad gauge railway line, a crucial project aimed at boosting connectivity in Uttarakhand. The Nile will collect pilgrimage sites, promote tourism, support local businesses and reduce travel time significantly. And moving on, INSV Tarini proudly entered Cape Town on 31st of March 2025, marking the successful 4th leg of the all-women-led Navika Sagar Parikrama 2. Sailing over 23,400 nautical miles aboard a 100% Indian-built yacht, this mission showcases India's naval strength, indigenous shipbuilding and the spirit of Atmanirbhar Bharat. DD India's Nazneen Ismail reports for more.
In a moment that symbolizes the growing strength of women in India's armed forces and the nation's rising prowess in maritime technology, The Indian Navy sailing vessel Tarini entered South African waters in Cape Town on 31st March 2025. The arrival marked the successful completion of the fourth leg of the Navika Sagar Parikrama 2, a historic transoceanic expedition led by a female duo. Lieutenant Commanders Dilna Devdas and Rupa Alagirisamy, the two brave officers navigating this challenging 8-month journey, aim to cover more than 23,400 nautical miles in 8 months, with a scheduled return to Goa in May 2025. The expedition has so far had 3 stopovers at Australia, New Zealand and the United Kingdom.
Navika Sagar Parikrama is a great example of India's maritime technology and shipbuilding capability, because we do not have as many yachts as the other countries have, but still we have been able to successfully complete 3 other navigations, and we are in our last leg to complete the 4th circumnavigation.
As you all know, Tarini is here on her circumnavigation voyage, and it is also a testament to strong bilateral relations between both the countries, and especially both the navies, the South African Navy and the Indian Navy.
In armed forces, we give equal opportunities to men and women. So as women, we are getting opportunities, like we are everywhere, like we are able to command a ship, and we are flying, and we are posted in the ship as a medical officer, as a logistics officer. Initially it was not there, so it is a great shift which have happened now.
Lieutenant Commander Dilna and Rupa, along with many other women officers, volunteered for the expedition. These officers went through rigorous training program, and we shortlisted Dilna and Rupa in May 22.
It's an honor and a privilege to be an Indian and to do this voyage as part of Indian Navy. And we always have taken the opportunity to fly a tricolor flag, and whenever we have achieved a milestone, and we celebrate it with pride by flying a flag.
Sail safe!
As INSV Tarini embarks on her historic journey across the oceans, she carries with her not just a female duo, but the spirit of India and the promise of progress.
History is being written in salt and steel. I'm Nazneen, witnessing this historical odyssey for DD India, Cape Town, South Africa. Jai Hind.
And famous Indian sand artist Sudarshan Patnaik recently became the first Indian to receive the prestigious Fred Darrington Sandmaster Award for his outstanding contribution to sand art. Well, Sudarshan Patnaik called on President Draupadi Murmu in Delhi on Wednesday, where President congratulated him for the honour. The award was presented during the Sand World 2025 International Sand Art Festival in Dorset, England. Also, to mark the occasion, Patnaik created a 10-foot-high sculpture of Lord Ganesha carrying the message of world peace. Sudarshan Patnaik, a Padma Shri awardee from Odisha, has participated in over 65 international sand art festivals and relationships. And on to some business news now. On U.S. stocks took a nosedive on Wednesday, with the Dow Jones plummeting 699.57 points to 39,669.39. The S&P 500 dropping 120.93 points to 5,275.70. And the Nasdaq Composite falling 516.01 points to 16,307.16. Nvidia's warning about $5.5 billion in charges due to new U.S. curbs on chip exports to China didn't help, with shares falling 6.9%. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's comments on slowing economic growth and higher inflation due to tariff also spooked investors. Also, the World Trade Organization has slashed its forecast for global trade this year amid the turbulence over the sharp spike in U.S. tariffs and consequent uncertainty that has battered market sentiments and stock indices. The latest global trade outlook released by the World Trade Organization on April 16 says U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs will force a 0.2% contraction by volume in global trade in 2025 instead of the 2.7% growth that was projected otherwise. WTO further warns that if Trump lifts the pause on his earlier announced reciprocal tariffs, it would amplify the problems and the contraction could be even much bigger. WTO said the economic disruption unleashed by Trump tariffs is likely to lead to a global growth loss of 0.6 percentage points. World GDP is now expected to grow at 2.2% instead of the baseline 2.8% in 2025. And on to some sports news now. Arsenal staved off Champions League holder Real Madrid and its rich history of unlikely comebacks to snatch a 2-1 victory on Wednesday night and reach the semi-finals with a superb 5-1 aggregate triumph. Bukayo Saka, who missed a first-half penalty, sent Arsenal ahead, and although Vinicius Jr. levelled the 15-time winner, was never close to making up the deficit. Later, Gabriel Martinelli rubbed salt on Real's wounds with a stoppage-time winner for Arsenal. Arsenal's 3-0 quarter-final first-leg triumph last week gave them a vital cushion as they made the first Final Four for the first time since 2009. The Gunners will face Paris Saint-Germain in the semi-finals on 30th of April in a hope to further their run to lift the Champions Trophy for the first time. And meanwhile, Inter Milan have also reached the semi-finals of the Champions League after drawing 2-2 with Bayern Munich to win the 4-3 on aggregate. Goals from captain Leandro Martinez and Benjamin Pavard cancelled out Harry Kane's strike for Bayern while levelling the tie in the 52nd minute. This win has showed that Inter is more than capable of reaching the final of Europe's elite club competition, as it did 2 years ago when it was narrowly beaten by Manchester City. Italian champion Inter Milan will face Barcelona in the semi-final on the 30th of April. And the tulip fields in full bloom drew spring visitors to Turner's Hill, a village in West Sussex in southern England. Over 1.5 million tulips representing more than 100 different varieties were planted for the annual Tulip Fest. Take a look. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. Well, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.